Hi, everybody. I'm Marissa Frosch from Amphibian Press, and welcome to the Amphibian Press podcast. Today, I'm talking to Rhett DeVane. She's the author of Southern fiction series Hooch and a couple other things that we'll talk about. Hi, Rhett.
Hi, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. I'm excited about this. So first, I want to talk about your Hooch series.
Yes, the Hooch series, that's actually short for Chattahoochee, Florida. It's a very small town. It was actually my hometown in the panhandle of Florida, and it has a state mental institution on the main drag. So when I started thinking about writing Southern fiction, what better place to set a novel than a town with a mental institution on the main drag? Because it was a very interesting place to grow up. So I have 6 books in the series now, and I'm working on the 7th. And they've been very popular with my audience, and I've really enjoyed it. A lot of good feedback and having a great time with them.
That's awesome. Let's talk about the latest release, Parade of Horribles.
Do you mind if I hold the book up?
Sure, go for it.
This is
You want to pull it back. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. See that little sticker right there? It won an award. I'm very proud of it. It's like being proud of a child.
Yeah.
Parade of Horribles actually had a very interesting beginning I'll share with you real quickly. I started getting some really odd messages on my cell phone. Hey, babe, you're hot. Let's hook up, on and on. And I started out with 2 or 3 a day, and I'd just delete them or say wrong number. And it got to the point it was 15, 20 a day, and they started at a certain time. So I wrote them down. And it turned out, after doing some research and contacting the police, that a woman had actually put my phone number down as a contact for a escort service.
Oh my goodness.
So we had to get that shut down. But I started to think, I thought it was funny because I had to track it down. But I started thinking, if you had somebody that had once been a victim of a hate crime, starting to get these same messages, that person might not perceive them as funny.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the springboard, because I had a character in the book, Jake Witherspoon. He's a gay man who had once been horribly beaten by someone who had abducted him. So that happens to Jake, and that starts off the Parade of Horribles. He takes this little small incident and makes it into his own private Parade of Horribles. That's where the idea came from.
Mm-hmm. So each of the text messages is the Parade of Horribles, or is there more to it than text messages?
There's more to it than text messages. There's a lot involved in this book. His best friend is also in the book, Hattie Davis. She's married to a fellow, one adopted child, and her child is being stalked online. So it's a little bit about the things that you never see coming, and also the things that you perceive in your own mind to be a threat, which really maybe aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And they're equally as bad.
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting concept. Where did you get the idea for Hattie's part of the story? Is it just from...
Hattie is actually, the character of Hattie is based loosely on me. Obviously, I'm not still living in Chattahoochee, and I'm not married with an adopted Chinese child. But a lot of Hattie's growing up experiences and the setting for where she lives, 3 miles out of town on her family homestead, is based on my upbringing. So I can bring a lot of the stories from that into it, and the Southernisms and growing past some of the bigotry and things that happen in the South, unfortunately. So she's based on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have friends who've had their children stalked online. So I've had a lot of experience talking to people to know this is a real issue.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So you also mentioned on the back of the book Hattie's brother, Bobby.
Yes.
What role does he play in the story?
Bobby changes so much throughout the story. He actually is the consummate redneck male, bigoted, horrible, just grew up being that way with his little group of cronies. But he has actually become friends with Jake over the years, even though they poke fun at each other. They still like each other.
Yeah.
And throughout the book, he is actually the one that ends up saving Jake's life toward the end of the book. A little bit of a spoiler alert, but not really that much of one. So it's very important to see the changes in him as he realizes that he's still hanging on to a lot of that mess that he grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way he's going to change is that he changes himself and the way he looks at things. And there's a very dramatic difference in Bobby at the end of the book as opposed to Bobby at the beginning of the book.
I love that because it kind of, that's the thing is people do have to change themselves. And I think a lot of people just expect it to happen, but you have
Yes.
to make it happen. Um, so that's all. So because Jake and Hattie are best friends, that's how they are related in the story.
Yes.
Um, and then we know how Bobby's related. So it's just about Jake dealing with, would you say Jake is the main character or Hattie is the main character?
This is a book that has multiple viewpoints. So you have basically four people who are very, very much main characters, and you're going to hear them different times during the book. It kind of bounces between them with enough information that the reader can follow along.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have the town gossip who knows everything, and she's very much got her fingers in everything too, Elvina. She's
Mm-hmm.
been in all the books. So I like to work with multiple viewpoints. I enjoy that so
Me
that I
too.
can get into the heads of the different people.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily an omniscient viewpoint where you're sitting like in a big cloud, but actually where you're down in the head of the person.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a big conflict with Jake and his partner of many, many years because the family does not approve of them. So there's a lot of real heartbreaking things that go on in the book for Jake where he has to deal with this very much bias of the family and how the family is treating his partner.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that each of these characters has their own kind of parade of horrible things that are happening?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Um, that sounds really interesting. I'm more curious about it now than I was when I read the description. Um, so the one of the other books in this series is the Suicide Supper Club. So you mentioned that the town gossip is in all the books. Are any of the other characters in multiple books?
Yes, each one of the books is a little different, and I would not call them necessarily a series per se. It'll take one character and go into that character's life and things that are happening. Then it'll take, but some of the characters that are in the town are still appearing, and they might have a bigger part in one book and a smaller part in another. But they're still there because they're all living in the same town and they're mentioned. Hattie may step back in one, and in Suicide Supper Club, here's
Mm-hmm.
in front of that. Suicide also sticker, notice sticker. Yes, okay. I had to point that out.
That's okay.
Also in Suicide Supper Club, you have four women who, for various reasons, decide they're going to commit group suicide. And it sounds like it would just be a horrible, horrible book to read, but it actually does not promote that as the ultimate answer. It actually promotes trying to find a way around it and look what you would have missed had you committed suicide. But it's all kinds of crazy. So yeah.
Yeah, suicide is kind of a tough topic for a lot of people. So what made you decide to write about it?
I actually got the idea from my mother. She was 91 when she passed away. She was a teacher, very, very liberal-minded for a woman born in 1917 in Macon, Georgia. Um, but she was one of the funniest people I've ever known, and I credit her with a lot of my sense of humor. Dad was funny too, but mother was off the chart. Um, I was talking to Mom one time about aging, and she said, honey, I think that you need to not make it to your 90s. They're a little tough. You should cut it off at about 88. And I said, well, Mom, what should I do? Hire somebody to pop me one day coming around the corner? And she says, you have a number of friends that are about the same age. Maybe y'all could get a group rate. And then, of course, we went on from there and said, well, we could go to a restaurant and plan it where we had this wonderful meal. And then we went out to the parking lot and somebody shot us all. So that was actually the springboard for Suicide Supper Club, having these four very different characters, these women in this small town, all different ages, that had very compelling reasons why they didn't want to be here. And they decided to take things in their own hands. But it doesn't exactly turn out how they planned it, because the person that they take out the hit with is just a total idiot. So, yeah, but it actually, like I said, people will look at it and say, gosh, I don't think I could read that. And I'm like, you don't understand. This will make you happy at the end. This is a very hopeful ending, which is something I like to do. Not right off into the sunset hopeful, but you feel like the characters are going to be able to move forward their lives, and it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nice. Do you want to talk a little bit about the four women?
I have to pick up and refresh my memory. One of them is a dental assistant, and she has been divorced for many, many years and has always had problems with relationships because of some things that happened early in her marriage, like very early. So she's very flawed and doesn't like herself very much. One of them is an elderly woman. She's in her late 80s, and she has just lost her husband of many years, and then loses his poodle, which she really didn't like, but that was the last thing from him. She's
Right.
very lonely. We have one who is a very much a perfectionist because she has to be because her husband's abusive,
Oh.
and she has just been beaten to the point where, she just finally says, I'm done. I don't have anything I can do besides this. And I'm trying to remember the other one. See, this has been a number of years since I've written this book, so I'm like, okay, I should have read ahead. But you have I'm trying to think of the other one. Anyway, you have four women that are very, very different, and I'm going to kick myself later for not remembering the fourth one. She'll kill me, but because they become very real and they talk in your head. But they really all are such different people, and for very compelling reasons. It's not just that one had a bad hair day.
Mhm.
She's had a bad hair day for a million years, and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, abuse is definitely a tricky thing to write about, and I think suicide is as well. So it's kind of cool that you decided to tackle those topics.
I don't shy away from heavy stuff. I've got a breast cancer patient in one of them, and her going through that. I have somebody who was switched at birth and comes back to the town. I know that sounds kind of, but like Young and the Restless,
It
but
happens.
it does. And it especially did in the South years ago, whenever they just put a toe tag on and hope for the best. But that, her coming back in and trying to find who she really is. Um, I have death and birth, and I can't even tell you, all kinds of hospitalizations. Anything that ever happens to me usually ends up in a book somewhere. And if it's something I feel very strongly about, uh, bias, prejudice, meanness, I try to bring it out in a book, because you can put something in a humorous Southern book that can be very heavy, and you can change somebody's mind just a little bit
Hmm.
by the end of the book, and they don't even realize it. And not to say that's manipulative, but it kind of is. But at least they're listening to a different point of view. They're giving credence to something different besides what they've always thought. So
Right.
that's kind of the point behind it. And I love to make people laugh, so that's kind of icing.
Hmm. Yeah, it just makes it very real, which is nice. I mean, sometimes we want to escape to a fairyland, but sometimes we need things that are real but also funny.
Yes, yes. Oh, I remember the other character. She just
Oh,
tapped
good.
me. The other character is Lois L., and she is a breast cancer patient who is recurrent breast cancer that she's just discovered, and
Oh.
she just cannot go through it again. But I knew she was going to tell me who she was. See, I told you. Anyway, that was the fourth one.
Oh, that's awesome. So, how did you get into writing? Like, have you always been writing? Is it something you found?
Always. Mother said that from the time that I could pick up one of those big fat pencils that we learned to write with, but probably not now, but then,
No.
that was back in the dark ages when we used to write with a bone. Um, I was making up stories and writing them down. And I was kind of into it in school, not so much in college. I went a totally different direction, went to the dental field. Um, but one day I just decided, hey, I've got this idea for this book, and I had no idea that I could actually write a novel, but, give it a try. And I wrote the first one. And then I thought, well, I can do that. I can do the second one. So first two books were published by a little small press out in Texas that's since gone under. But it gave me the confidence that I could do this. And it just about once a year, I sit down and write a book.
Hmm.
And then I revise until I want to kill myself. Sorry.
It's the way it
Reference to
is.
suicide. Yeah. Okay. We all know that's not the favorite part of this whole process, right?
Right. Until you absolutely hate it and you never want to look at it again.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't want to talk about it, right? You have to give it a few
Yeah.
years and you get over it, and then you like it again.
Yeah, and then it's awesome when you go back.
Did I write that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I do that a lot.
I'm funny.
Yeah,
That's usually what happens with me. It's like, huh,
yeah,
I'm funny.
yeah. Did I do that? Yeah, it's always, yeah.
Um, so you don't just write Southern fiction, you also have middle grade chapter books and some magical realism with dragons. Do you want to talk about those?
Yes, really having a good time with this. I have a couple of middle grade books that are out published under my own publishing company. And that series I probably would continue. I have some written that I need to revise. I wrote those years ago, and I promised my mother before she passed away that I would do something with them. So that was that thing. But the series I'm writing now, the middle grade series, is just a wonderful, fun thing because it has dragons in it. And who doesn't love dragons? I mean,
Right.
what's not to love, right? So, but my dragons are some of them are kind of goofy. But I've written 3 in that series in middle grade and then moving the same characters into young adult. I've written 1 young adult and I'm working on the 2nd young adult. There again, some very heavy things happen. Bullying in school. In this one that I'm working on now, one of the dragon guardians actually becomes addicted to a very, very strong drug in the other world where they go with the dragons. So I'm talking to a number of people who have family members who are addicted to heroin and have battled that for years. So I'm learning a lot about addiction that I never knew.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's very important, even in middle grade and young adult, to have some meat to it besides just the entertainment. Not that you're trying to teach something, a moral necessarily, but you can get some points across that they need to hear.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's almost even more important, like with stuff like that, that they learn about it at a young age and how
Yes.
dangerous it actually is.
Yes. And
Especially with heroin, because you try it once and you can be hooked. So
yeah,
it's, it's not something to mess around with. And I
no.
think it's important for kids to know that.
Well, and this character actually knows about addiction because her father is an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very opposed to being addicted to anything. But the way that this is so sneaky, she believes it's not a drug. So the first time that she tries it, that's it. And it goes downhill from there for her.
Right.
So, yeah.
Which is even better because the people who have that sense of, like, I know what I'm talking about, sometimes they're even at greater risk because they aren't necessarily paying attention to,
Yes,
like, if you're afraid of alcohol, you might not pay attention to these other things. So
absolutely. And not see yourself.
mm-hmm.
You don't see that you're
Right.
exactly like this person that you don't want to be like. You actually are. You have that tendency. And
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't drink for that reason because she knows she has that tendency, but she talks herself into being okay with this drug.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole lot of that going on. Talk to a lot of people, substance abuse. I believe in research. You really, really have to know what you're talking about when you're a writer because somebody's going to nail you on it.
Yeah.
And the good thing is I'm a dental hygienist by trade.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do to support my writing habit. And most people will understand that you do need to have a day job.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you might be rich and famous, but don't count on that. You're writing because you love it. If you're doing it for the right reasons, I don't even know where I was going with this, but anyway, that's the other thing. Short attention span, right?
Yeah. I do want to mention, so you said you're going from middle grade into YA, and I really like that idea because a lot of people, especially like with the rigid traditional publishing system, you write young adult books and or middle grade books and they have to stay middle grade, but those kids grow up. So if
Mm-hmm.
the series can grow with them, I think that's
Right.
really cool.
The one thing I really have a problem with the way people approach things nowadays is they want you to brand yourself into you write Southern fiction. Okay, Rhett DeVane, you're a Southern fiction author. You write adult Southern fiction. Does that mean I can't do anything else? No, it absolutely doesn't. I think that people, and I've seen this with authors too, people that stay with one thing and just run it in the ground get very stale and they start to get to the point they don't like what they're doing and it shows in their writing. I've read some bestsellers that by about maybe book 8 or 9, I just think, oh man, they're making them come out with one a year and they're hating it now.
Mm-hmm.
So why not go write something else? Go write memoir if you want to, or write middle grade or picture books. I've done some picture books and they're fun, and as you know, they're very hard. I think it's and it may be that with the middle grade and the YA that I need to have a pseudonym besides my name. I don't see why I can't just write under Rhett DeVane because I'm just a writer. I'm not a writer of just this one thing.
Mm-hmm. I
Even
do
the
think
grocery list.
I do think people they accept these rules and they forget that it's not rules, it's guidelines.
Yep.
So I do have multiple pen names because I just felt like it was easier for me that way.
Mhm.
I have a women's fiction romance pen name, and then I have a paranormal urban fantasy pen name. It's just because those two worlds are completely different, and the things
Mhm.
that I'll be doing with them are completely different. But by doing that, like, first of all, I'm not going to limit myself because I want to write what I want to write, but um, I can take a break. If I don't want to be writing under Cameron anymore, which is my urban fantasy, I can just hop on over to Angela and have a nice lighthearted romance story, and it does keep things fresh. And I think flip-flopping between them the way that I have been has really helped keep me focused and enjoy what I'm doing when I'm doing it.
That's excellent. I'll take that under advisement. That way you get to be a different person.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, like I just did a podcast interview for Cameron, which was literally about ghost stories and haunted houses, and I never would have done that for my romance pen name. So it was a lot of fun, and I probably wouldn't have even thought of it if I had it all under one umbrella. So oh, and I wanted to talk about your Writers for Hire blog, which looks really cool.
I started Writers for Hire. It's Higher, by the way, not Hire.
Right.
A number of years ago as a way to spotlight fellow authors. A lot of the ones originally were people I knew in the area or if I'd met at conferences, whatever, and just hand them a card. It basically highlights them in a different way. They answer three different questions. Where do you see your writing going? What do you do with your writing to make the world a better place?
Hmm.
What do you do in your life to make the world a better place? It's not just how did you get started, the usual normal questions that you see. It's a little different. And I've had a great time with it, had very good response from it. And I've met some really lovely people just in the things people are doing. It's very uplifting to me to focus on something positive for a change instead of all the horrible stuff that's going on right now.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, knows you can watch the TV and forget it. But Writers for Hire gives me an opportunity to be able to put the spotlight on somebody else because I really think this is not about competition. We need to help each other. That's what we're here for. And there's room for everybody at the table.
I completely
Absolutely.
agree.
Yeah.
Because there's no way, I always tell authors whenever they get into the competition thing, I always say, an avid reader reads multiple books a month. Can you publish multiple books a month? No.
No.
So other authors are not your enemy, they're your friends.
Absolutely. And in that same vein, I have met authors that I read their books before I met them. And
Mm-hmm.
after I met them, I didn't want to read their books anymore because they were so reluctant to share anything that might help somebody else
Mm-hmm.
that I just thought I don't really. And that's a very minority. I mean, maybe a couple. Most of them are extremely generous, and if you ask them things, they're happy to pass along any information they have. I don't know, maybe they get pulled so many different directions, they get jaded after a while. But I have met some that I didn't really want to read their books after I met them and knew them personally.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I've met people that I didn't read their books until I met them and I thought, I really like that person. I want to read that book. So
Yeah, it does go both ways, doesn't
it
it?
does. And that's why going to conferences is so important. I really urge, especially writers, if you can attend conferences, definitely do it. It's amazing the support you get when you go to one of those and how
Mhm.
much you learn. You don't
Yeah.
have to have a degree. I don't have a college degree in writing. Creative writing wasn't my deal.
Hmm.
I do everything, learn as I go. I'm making mistakes.
Yep. My degree was in marketing, so so yep.
And that's my weak spot, okay? I want to just write. I don't want to do that marketing stuff. I know.
Well, this counts, as marketing, so it can
I
be
know.
fun.
Yeah, this is the fun part. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
this. This is fun. And speaking in front of people, I do a lot of speaking engagements around this area, around Tallahassee. And I just spoke for this wonderful group here in town, Oasis for Women and Girls and
Mhm.
Pace Center. And it's a little kind of I don't know, they do a variety show. And I got to read in front of the crowd again. I'd done it about 7 years ago. I found that I just really enjoy being in front of people. There's
Mm-hmm.
just this nutty fruitcake Carol Burnett person that comes out when I get in front of a mic. I don't know where she came from, but anyway, that I like. So that part of marketing is all the other, get on the social media and yammer about yourself. That goes against everything that I've been taught,
It also doesn't really work.
Oh yeah, right.
So,
Thank you for letting me off the hook. I appreciate that.
you're welcome. It drives me nuts when people say, I don't have enough time for marketing. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And they're like, I'm on social media. And it's like, you have to have 100,000 plus followers to make social media worth it. So don't spend your time there. Use it to get to know other authors,
Yeah.
Don't use it for, yeah.
That makes me feel so much better. You just don't know. That was worth this whole podcast.
I'm glad
You're
I
my
could
best
help.
friend forever now, okay?
I'm so glad I could help.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's something that's actually been bugging me, and I was going to write a blog post about it. So I think I will still do that. So yeah, I really like your Writers for Hire, which it's the number 4 also. There'll be a link underneath the thing, but for people who are looking, it's Writers for the number Hire, HIGHER. And that's a really neat thing. I really like it when people are trying to like lift other people up. I think that's the way you have to be in life, and makes me happy to see it.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that, on my website, there is a contact me page with my Gmail address.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are an author and you would like to get onto Writers for Hire, drop me a line. I don't promote things that are, I don't know. I don't know if I can go with the real hardcore porn or anything like that, just for personal kind of preference. I try not to be judgmental, but I am sort of, or anything that's very, very negative or overly violent. But I would be happy to talk back and forth with you and see about getting you on Writers for Hire, because I think that any little boost is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Put that little push in there for you.
Yeah.
And for you too.
So where can people find you online?
Online, I'm on Facebook. I have an author page, Rhett DeVane, of course. I have also a Facebook page, Rhett DeVane. Just put that in there and it'll come up. I'm on Twitter. And let's see. Well, of course, my website. You can find me there. All the books are available on Amazon. They're in Kindle format and trade paperback. A couple of them are in Audible.
Mm-hmm.
I did try that a little bit and had a good time with that. I don't know how many of them I'll put into Audible. That's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Even if when you have a narrator, it takes a lot of time. And I just have to sleep at some point. It's just very inconvenient. But just a few little places here and there. Like I said, I don't spread myself too thin.
What's your website? Is it rhettdevane.com?
Yes, rhettdevane.com.
And that's RHETTDEVANE.
Yes.
.com.
Yes, that's me.
And again, I'll have a link for people to click, but just in case.
Cool. I love that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on with me.
Thank you for inviting me. I've had a good time.